Football is back, baby. Well, kind of and almost. Welcome to the Zach Boren Blitz on a Monday on the Beat. Is presented by the Waterworks. Spring football starts tomorrow, Tuesday, in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. He's Zach Boren. I am Austin Ward. I'm fired up. What's your level of excitement, Zach?
Football starts tomorrow, but it really doesn't start for another 2 weeks. And what I mean by that is, yes, the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to be on the practice field. Yes, they're going to be running plays, having practice, but in 2 weeks are when the pads come on, Austin, and that's when real football starts.
Well, that's what I said, kind of and almost.
Kind of. You want to know some starts? Coaches are out there, players are out there. It's as realistic as football as you're going to get from the time that they, took the pads off against Miami from that standpoint. So it's an exciting time for the Buckeyes. I know here's the really exciting part, Austin, and this is no pads, it doesn't matter. There's some new faces that I know people are excited to see running around the football field, whether it be the transfer portal guys, whether it be some young true freshmen running around. There are some dudes that I know this Ohio State coaching staff is excited to see out there on the field.
Yeah, so we had a little meet and greet with the coaching staff on Thursday night. It was off the record. It wasn't for attribution or anything like that. But there was one thing that Ryan Day mentioned that I think is pretty obvious, and I can share it. He said, well, there's 51 new players on the Ohio State roster, so he told us, make sure that you get your flip card so that you can identify those guys. I think even going through workouts, Zach, these coaches are looking around like, I think I know who this guy is, but we need to get some numbers on these guys too so that they know who everybody is. This is the largest amount of attrition and transition that I can ever recall, and I know that that's the same for Ryan Day and the staff. So that's what's so exciting starting on Tuesday. It's just like getting a feel for, we know all the names, but like, what do they look like? Get to know them. How do they fit into the roster? It gives a different level, I think, of interest for me heading into the spring camp than I've had in a long time.
Austin, I want people to realize what you just said, and I'm going to repeat it. 51 new faces on this Ohio State football team. That's unheard of. That's never happened. That is the new age of college football. Like, yes, the transfer portal has been open for a number of years, but that many new faces, like, that's insane. I want everyone to think, Austin, if you're in the NFL, that is in a completely new NFL football team, right? Like, that's an entire roster on an NFL team. That is absolutely crazy. To Ryan, and you guys were there, right? Here's one thing that I hope, that I know other coaches hope on the staff, is that they see those 51 guys as an opportunity for them to coach dudes, get them up to Ohio State's level, and have some really key contributors this year on this team, right? Because so many times people can say 51 new guys, like, oh my God, is it a culture problem? Are we kind of going through a rebuild that you see, kind of like a Colorado and Florida and like some of those teams have done, right? No, this is a Ohio State football team that came off a national championship in a quarterfinal college football game in the last 2 years. And a lot of these guys are expected to come in here and contribute right away. So that's the exciting part. And I think that's what's going to kind of get the coaches' juices flowing in spring ball. Because so many times you go out there and you're like, I know what we have. I know these faces. This is a time just for the guys to get acclimated, right? We are starting basically in kindergarten football, going through technique, going through our bread and butter plays, like very, very basic stuff. And now this spring, they're going to be able to see a lot of guys, though, that they know they need to contribute in the fall.
What's it like for a player, Zach, to go through these acclimation practices? Like, you're so close to playing real football again, getting on the pads, and then you've got, 2 days of running around technique or figuring out, if you're a new player, where to go, and then spring break. It's like, are these annoying? Is it still exciting just to be out there again and running around with your teammates? A blend of the two, maybe?
Yeah, I would say more so just excited to get out and run around with your teammates, right? Like, these guys have been through 2.5, 3 months now of winter workouts. They've been in the weight room almost every single day, competing against one another, grinding. Their bodies are starting to change. So these first couple acclimation periods is very much, hey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to have some fun. And normally they're a little bit more lighthearted, right? Obviously, individual time, you're really grinding, doing things. And then when you get to 7-on-7 team, when there's no pads, it's more so, hey, we're flying around to the football, having fun, kind of talking trash for the first time in a while and doing those things. And then when you come back from spring break, it's kind of a story of two tales, and it depends on who you are, right? Like there's a whole bunch of guys that are unproven or that are new, or guys that are, guys in that same group, guys that are truly competing for starting roles. And from that standpoint, you're ecstatic because hey, it's my time to compete, right? I can really position myself going into fall camp on where I stand on the depth chart. And let's be honest, you being competing for the number 1 or number 2 spot gives you a hell of a more of a leg up than, say, you're number 3 or number 4 coming out of spring football. So those guys are really going to compete. And then on the flip side, if you're a returning starter and hey, listen, kind of my position set in stone, you can use spring ball as a time where, and the coaches are great with this, of where was I unsuccessful in the previous year? What did I really have trouble with? And nowadays you've got so much data in the grades that you have, whether it be, hey, I really struggled run blocking to my right, but I was fine straighter to my left. Or, hey, in pass pro, I really struggled when a guy gave me an up and under move. Or I really struggled against guys that were taller and lengthier, right? Because my arm, wasn't getting good hand placement. Like there are so many things you can go through in the details. And so when you're a returning starter, so much of spring ball is to work on your flaws from the previous season. And so, like I said, it's kind of the story of two tales from that standpoint, but it's a time to get better in general, Austin, right? And I know it's kind of a tease to a lot of those guys, and sometimes you're just going through the motions. But if you really zone in and say, hey, I'm going to get better or I'm going to compete, you can get a lot from spring football.
So you went right to a conversation, I don't know if it was on purpose or an accident, to talking about the offensive line. And they are established starters, 4 of them coming back. But the part where Ohio State maybe didn't meet the standard, obviously, against Indiana and Miami, was up front. Would that be the first place that you're looking if you're walking out into the Woody on Tuesday morning, Thursday morning, or 2 weeks from now? Is that the most interesting position for you? Is it somewhere else?
I think it's 2 positions, and that's why I'm so excited for when the pads come on, because, or I should say 2 position groups. I think it's the offensive line and the defensive line, right? Like
Okay.
those are the 2, and when pads come on, you're really going to see who's stepping up and who's doing some things. Now, you've got a bunch of starters returning back on the offensive line, right? But just like what I talked about, it's almost like Indiana and Miami could not have been more polar opposite defensive lines, and they're the ones who gave Ohio State the most issues. And, Indiana was a little undersized, or they were undersized, but they did a lot of stemming of different games, doing different things, crosses, and it was giving Ohio State fits from that standpoint, right? And then you go up against Miami, and Miami were some dudes, right? Big dudes, athletic freaks, able to do those things. And so Ohio State obviously struggled with both of those defense lines. So how's that offensive line going to come together? How are they going to go against Texas again, right? Who's going to be freaky athletic? You got Oregon, who's going to be unbelievable, right? Michigan's going to be a lot better. Like the list goes on and on. USC is going to be like the defensive lines that Ohio State's going to face this year are stacked. And then you look at the defensive line, and how do you create an unbelievable defense, a Matt Patricia style defense? You've got dudes up front that can help stop the run, right? And who are they filling with? Those dudes that graduated or that went off to the NFL? Like, there's some production there, man. And the most important one, I think, sitting right there in the middle of the defense, and Caden McDonald, who is going to fill that role. And I think spring ball is going to be a crucial time for that nose tackle position.
Yeah, spring weather is also changing, Zach. So keep your home ready for any weather with the Waterworks and Hetter Energy Savings Plan. Get priority heating service, members only savings, and continuous comfort all year long. Call today to schedule. It's the Waterworks and Hetter, 614-232-2222. There's an interesting blend of like returning veteran and also kind of still a relative new face in terms of contribution, who I really want to see what these 15 practices are like. And when you're talking about the defensive line, this team needs Edric Houston to emerge. We saw him at times next to Caden McDonald a year ago. I thought he got better as the year went on. And I don't know what he can prove in March and April. It's obviously going to be a lot more relevant what he does in September. But for everything that you're talking about, a Matt Patricia defense, pressure coming from up front, stopping the run, and Edric Houston, maybe we'll just see a different body type after 2 more months of winter workouts. You got up to around 290 pounds a year ago. It was 1 year of transition from the edge to the 3 technique position. Like, he's not new around here, but he needs another level of contribution for Ohio State to be a national title contender. So I'm really interested to see, like, for me, one player specifically that's not a new face is what Edric Houston provides in camp, because he's got to be a better version than he was a year ago.
It has to be. You hit the nail on the head, right? And I'm gonna be honest, if he does not have a good spring ball, that's one of those guys that's on the flip, not a returning starter that's working on things. This is a dude who's got to come in there and compete. And it goes back to, if he doesn't have a good spring ball, he's going to go into fall camp looking around like, where do I fit in, right? Because you start talking about, Will Smith is going to get better from last year, right? You got John Walker, who's coming in, that I know they have huge hopes for. You got Smith, right, from Alabama, who's coming in, that I know they've got huge hopes for. So if you're Edric Houston and you start looking around that defensive line room, there's some dudes to compete with. And if you aren't coming out and competing and working your butt off every single day and continuously getting better through those 15 practices, you might find yourself on the outside looking in. But on the flip side, if you're Ohio State, you need Edric Houston to step up and be dominant and be that 5-star player that he can be, right? And Ryan Day, I feel like, always talks about this every offseason, especially going into fall camp and sometimes in spring football, right? It's consistency. That is what, anytime there's a quarterback battle, anytime there's a huge position battle, he talks about consistency. And that's Edric Houston in this offseason, this spring football and fall camp, because he shows flashes where he can be a dominant all Big Ten style football player. And then the next 4 or 5 plays, it looks like he doesn't even belong on the field. So what Edric Houston are you going to get? How does Edric Houston stack plays together and continue to be a dominant player and play up to the level that he can? It'll be very interesting. That's a great one that you brought up, Austin.
Yeah, who else would you throw in there, Zach? Because we got, obviously not for tomorrow or Thursday, but you're going to have one key scrimmage in the midway part of camp. You're going to have the Student Appreciation Day scrimmage. Those are going to be physical. Those are going to be competitive. Like, there aren't a ton of jobs necessarily up for grabs, at least not on offense, but are there other people that when you get back in there that you'll immediately have your eye on?
You want to know something? It's this might be interesting to some people. And it's probably the position that people are thinking the least of, but it's probably what I'm most excited to see. And you're probably going to be shocked by this, Austin. It's wide receiver. Ooh. Right? And everyone's like, man, who's worried about that? We have Jeremiah Smith, whatever it might be. But Brandon Ennis needs to come on. I'm a huge Brandon Ennis fan. I think he can do so many things for this team, but he needs to be consistent, right? You saw him in the playoff run, is that freshman year or whatever it was, make some big catches. And then last year when they truly needed Brandon Ennis, it was kind of the Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith show, right? And so Carnell Tate's gone. What are you going to get from Brandon Ennis? And then also, what are you going to get from some of these transfers? Like, I'm intrigued to see what those guys can do. First time being at Ohio State, first time being in a Ryan Day offense, and Austin, ding, 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 you have a new wide receiver coach too, right?
Yeah.
So what's that going to look like? Everyone's been used to Brian Hartline and what he's taught. Are we going to have kind of a different feel from the wide receiver room? Are the wide receivers going to be doing some different things? Because even though it's a Ryan Day offense, right? And Arthur Smith is the OC, as a position coach, you're still able to throw some opinions out there. You're still able to throw a little jazz into it, right? And I think Brian Hartline is so much of the prototypical wide receiver where he wants his dudes lined up, reading the coverage, and then just banging dudes off the line and beating them, right? Whereas if you look at LSU's offense, they do a ton of motion. They do a ton of quick screens, things like that, like almost a pseudo Urban Meyer type of offense, right, that we saw from Ohio State. So is Ohio State going to call on the wide receivers to do more of those things, whether it be, speed handoffs, whether it be quick screens, whatever it might be? Like, are we going to see a different dynamic from this wide receiver room? And so I'm probably being too long-winded on that. There's just so many different things that come up when you have new faces, when you have a new coach, and it's probably not what everyone is expecting to hear.
No, I am a little bit surprised, but I guess not shocked, because the case that you laid out is a good one. It's compelling. And when you're looking at the need to replace at the top Brian Hartline, and also in terms of the personnel, when you lose Carnell Tate, like Devin McEwen and Kyle Parker, they don't, most players don't have Carnell Tate's skill set, but they don't even look like they play the same spot as Carnell. And Brandon Ennis, we know, doesn't, because he would have had opportunities in the past to prove that he could have played outside. Now, someone's going to have to. What does that mean for Chris Henry Jr. in his first spring camp? Jaquaden Guilford, as he gets rolling in here, like, it's not just the transfer portal guys. There's opportunity to play, because you're also now missing that class in between with Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter and Bryson Rogers gone. So you make a great point, Zach. You do have Jeremiah Smith back, and you have a captain in Brandon Ennis, but there's also still just a ton of questions about not just who's going to be out there to replace Carnell Tate's production, but what the scheme might look like. Because if they're not like for like replacements for Carnell, you might have to deploy them in a different way. All three of those guys, or Chris Henry Jr. And how quickly can Chris Henry Jr. get up to speed as a true freshman? Like, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Well, depending on you just named a whole bunch of guys that obviously have my attention, right? And I think that's great. But the whole reason why I'm saying that is because depending on the consistency from Brandon Ennis in the output, and I'm not questioning Brandon Ennis as a person. I'm not questioning Brandon Ennis as a leader on this team. I would love playing with Brandon Ennis, because he's just a guy who's got swagger. He's a guy you want to go in a back alley with. But at the end of the day, you have to have production. And that's something that's somewhat been missing from Brandon Ennis. So you bring up Jeremiah Smith. Well, guess what? In an Ohio State offense, there's at least three or four wide receivers that are playing. Of those guys that you just mentioned, outside of Jeremiah Smith, three of them need to step up. And really, outside of Brandon Ennis, who's never truly been called on at Ohio State, none of those guys have ever, really been in an Ohio State uniform. And so
right.
The other reason why I bring that up is because I think from the wide receiver position in spring ball, you can actually see what you're going to get, right? Whereas sometimes it's hard to see inside the box, or, the front seven on defense, like you see a little bit, but they truly aren't freaking having snot come out of their nose and blood everywhere competing until you kind of get to August camp, right? And so we could talk about the front seven on defense. We talk about the offensive line, but you're going to get a clear picture of who can compete, who can do some things with the ball in their hands, who can run freaking unreal routes at wide receiver. Yeah. And you named a bunch of talented dudes. Well, some of those guys need to step up, and it can't just be one. It's not like, you just need a right tackle. You need three or four of those guys to really show out. And you brought up some of those true freshmen. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do, finally getting on a college campus and competing against some legit DBs.
That's right. And that opportunity is almost here. One more day, Ohio State gets on the field. A couple acclimation practices Tuesday and Thursday this week before spring break. So snap judgments will be back on Tuesday. Can't wait to be talking about that and see what we see got a viewing periods on both days, Zach. So I'm fired up for this week ahead, and I'm definitely excited to talk with you about week 1 next week on another Boren Blitz presented by the Waterworks. Thanks for starting this week with us right here on the Austin and Birm Show. He's Zach Boren. I am Austin Ward. We will talk to you from the Woody tomorrow.